very quickly share some of mine. I'm going to come back to these in a moment. You will have seen them in the materials sent out if you had looked at those. And if you haven't, here they are. And the last one I have added recently.
But you know that this will never happen, don't you?
I do. Well, I don't know. I'm still hoping. Still
Doesn't
hoping.
seem to have the personality of someone who leaves, quits.
Anyway, it's not well expressed, because the next thing I want you to do is to think about how well expressed your goals are. There is a theory, there are several theories, that when we have an objective in our life, it's important, first of all, to write it down, because writing it down has a kind of magic. It makes it much more likely that we will be able to move towards it, okay? Not that we'll necessarily achieve it, but it helps. It helps a lot. Once we've written it down, and if you don't want to do this today, that's fine. Go away, you will have all this material, think about it and do it in your own time, okay? So you need to check how well expressed your goal is. Is it expressed in a way which is helpful? Or is it expressed in a way which is really unhelpful? And there are lots and lots of criteria. SMART is probably the most well-known one. It's used a lot in business. So you check your goal against these criteria. Is it specific enough? Can you measure it? Will you know when you've got it? Is it something you can achieve? I would actually question that one myself. I think if we only go for what we can achieve, that's doing precisely what all the quotes said don't do. I think we need to go for something worth having. Relevant. So is it important to me, to the world? Time bound. Can I give a date by which this will have happened? Okay, so that's SMART, but I've also got another one, which is my own, which has some of the elements of SMART, but is different and has a very strong NLP flavor. And it's AEIOU. Okay. I don't know if you want to try guessing any of those letters. I'll tell you. In a normal class, I'd push you a little bit longer to come up with some ideas, but I won't, because it's almost 10 to 6. So are your objective affirmative? So have you written down what you want rather than what you don't want? So for example, I want to be a great teacher. That's affirmative. I don't want to make mistakes in my English is negative. And that's not going to help you. So if you had a goal, I don't want to make mistakes, you'd need to change it to I want to speak correctly, or I want to write correctly. So it needs to be positive, and it needs to be positive so you can visualize it. Be careful, because there are some hidden negatives. I want to lose weight. It is negative. It's about what you don't want. You don't want the weight. So instead you would want to say, I want to be slim, or I want to fit into my old jeans, or whatever. Yeah. I want to stop doing something is negative. It's about what you want to stop or avoid or chase. So just be very careful about how affirmative your goal is. And if it isn't, change it so it is. Examinable is the same as the measurable in SMART. So how will you know when you've achieved your goal? What will you see, hear, and feel that's different? And I think that's what makes it different in NLP terms, is the multisensory. So see, hear, and feel. Imaginable. Can you imagine achieving this? This is so important, and it's what, again, Rini talked about, the importance of visualization in her session, and I talked about it in my session last year as well. The more we can imagine something positive happening, the more we're going to help it to happen. So it's really good to have an affirmative goal in the first place to do that. Okay, meaning, are the consequences okay? Is this going to be good for me? Is it going to be good for the people around me? And the lovely word, is it ecological? So is it good for the world? Is it green? Is it going to help people? Or is it going to do something else? And then finally, tricky one, this is where my Boris one fails, I'm afraid. Up to you. Is it up to you? Or is it about somebody else? Or is it about other people? Or don't you think you have the skills to do this? The answer is, if you don't, then maybe you need to go and get them. And that could be another goal up front. So these are really important questions to help you really clarify how you express and how you work towards your objective, okay? So I do urge you, I'll talk you through my goals and we'll see how well formed they are. And they aren't deliberately, by the way. I wrote them so they would be thought-provoking. So the first one, I want to be able to paddleboard across the harbour without bumping into anything. Yes, not helpful, not helpful. The first bit's okay, but the without bumping into anything makes me visualize all sorts of collisions. So it really is not good for my confidence. So I would want to change that to something like, I want to be able to paddleboard across the harbour, steering a clear path between the boats. Then I can visualize that, and that works, okay? These things require practice, by the way. Do please find time to try some of these out with your own objectives. I want to improve my eyesight. Yeah. It's a bit vague. We always talk about improve. What does that mean? It's not measurable unless I say something like, I want to improve my eyesight so I can read a book without glasses. That's clear, okay? Or on a scale of 0 to 10, what's my eyesight now? About 3 or a 4. I want to get it to a 7 or an 8. Be careful with things like this, because some of these things are not entirely under our control. They're not up to us. Improving my eyesight is not totally under my control. It depends on my eyes as well, but I can help. I don't need just to sit back and not do anything. There are certain things I can do to slow down the I actually have macular degeneration, and that's not curable, but it is slowable. So I can slow it in various ways. Oh, I love this one. I want to stop being nervous of technology, not helpful. What we need to say instead is something like, I want to feel confident with technology. Wouldn't that be nice? Or even maybe, I want to enjoy technology. That would be a really good one to have. I don't know if any of you share this particular one. Wouldn't it be lovely just to be, I mean, I think like you are, Maria Antonietta, you seem very at home with technology. And I would like to be like that.
It's not true. I'm at home only with the things that I know that I'm able to do. But when I'm trying to learn something new, I get very, very anxious. I confess.
Okay.
But you're brilliant at animation, Maria. You're brilliant at doing animation. It's a real skill.
She can do things that the other people can't do.
I learned that. I learned animation a long time ago, so now I feel confident. But when I started doing that, I was getting crazy.
Well, isn't that a fantastic metaphor for everybody? So it's okay to start feeling crazy, but look what you achieve, okay? You can get there. you got there. Brilliant. So winter swimmer, that's a very different kind of, that's more of a dream than a goal. And it's an identity level one. I'm come back to that again later. Speak fluent German, it's a bit vague. Maybe take part in a conversation without having to ask wie bitte every two seconds. I want to fit into my old jeans is perfect. It's a really good, well-expressed objective. It's very clear if I achieve it or if I don't. Yeah. How I'm going to do that is something else, but the actual objective is good. Boris Johnson, unfortunately, that's not a good one. And I just wanted to share a couple more with you that I thought of later. I had one which was, I want to read Ulysses. Now, I don't know if you know Ulysses, you probably do. Ulysses is this enormous tome. Do you know Ulysses? Written by James Joyce. And I have joined a book club who are reading Ulysses because I have an objective. I want to read Ulysses, but I'm learning as I go forward that that's not a well-expressed objective anyway, because we need to check when we say I want, whether we mean I want. And in my case, what was I want was I ought, and it's different. So do be very careful with goals. It doesn't mean to say because you have an ought to that it's not okay, but just check that it is okay. I mean, there are things we ought to do and should do, but we need to be very careful of the modals we use. And this one certainly wasn't a want. And that was quite useful for me. Now that I know it's not want to and it's ought to, I feel differently about it. I'm still going to my Monday evening. That's what I do on a Monday evening after dance class with Angela. Go to a workshop on it. And I'm quite bored actually, but I'm thinking I'm going to continue because you never know. And my last outcome I'll share with you, my last objective is I want to write a children's book. Now that, again, that sounds very kind of simple, but it's not, because it's not just about writing the book. That's one thing. There's all kinds of things involved in that. The missing bit is I want to get it published. And that's something which is not up to me, not entirely. It is partly up to me in some ways, but it's never going to be entirely up to me if no one wants to publish it. So these are other things maybe to explore a little bit. It's fascinating how much you can find in an objective. So do please, if you have time, if you're hoping to come to the session on the 22nd of March, find time to come up with some objectives that you write down and look at IEAOU or SMART and see if you can explore them a little and share ideas with us when we meet again. That would be so fantastic. And if you can't, don't worry, because I'll have a lot to do, because I'm not doing everything today that I was going to do. So there'll be lots spillover. Okay. I'll mention this briefly. The reason that visualization is so important when we're dealing with objectives is because it sets in play the reticular activate. What on earth is that? Apparently, and do Google it because I'm not going to say much about it today. Check it out. It's the filter that responds to visualization. When we make pictures in our mind, our reticular activating system sends out kind of filters to look for information and data that will help that be so. It's like self-fulfilling prophecy. So it's a kind of unconscious filter in the brain. It's like when you're, for example, you're walking to get in your car after being shopping and it's when you're in your car and you're driving around looking for a parking space and you suddenly see there's nowhere to park at all, but then you see out of the corner of your eye, somebody carrying lots of shopping bags, and you know they're going to free up a space. So it's that kind of thing. If you imagine finding a space, you're much more likely to notice than if you don't. Okay, so that was really badly explained, but I check it out online, and it is a fascinating kind of justification for visualization. If we needed any more, we know that visualization is useful for all those kinds of things. Certainly for exams, certainly for health, sports, and general success in achieving our objectives. Okay. Once you've decided what you want and you've put it through some criteria and you've expressed it in a way which makes it absolutely beautiful, find someone who's good at it if you can, if it's a question of a skill that you want to learn, or read about people who are good at it. You don't even have to meet them. Modeling is a word which is used in NLP, which means that you interview someone who has a skill that you want. You ask them lots of very detailed questions about what they're doing on the outside, but also what's happening on the inside. So what's going on in their head as they do, what kinds of pictures are they seeing, what kinds of feelings are they getting, what kind of internal dialogue is happening, etc., etc. And I did this with the winter swimming. And this is what I really wanted to talk to you about. I mentioned earlier, this is where I swim in the winter a couple of times a week. So I am in effect a winter swimmer. And it's a wonderful place. It's only for women, this particular little lake, I suppose it is, on Hampstead Heath. It's called the Ladies' Pond, which I think is a wonderful, wonderful name. And I think it absolutely is, because it's so kind of old-fashioned. It is about ladies. It's not about women. It's ladies. And it's lovely. And a long time ago in 1994, I did a modeling project for my master practitioner in NLP. And I interviewed lots of women who swim in the pond, because I wanted to find out how they did it. At the time, I wasn't doing it. So how did they manage to get into that awfully cold water? And it is awfully cold. At the moment, it's about 6 degrees. How did they do it? What strategies did they use? And could I learn from them and apply the strategies to myself and get into the cold water? And the answer was yes. But what surprised me was that it was not just about strategy. They all had a strategy, a physical, mental strategy for getting into the water. And so I was able to take bits and pieces of different people's strategies and make them into my own strategy. That was great. I could do that. But what I found most of all was it wasn't just about strategy. It was much more about identity and belief. But all the women, without exception, said something like, oh, it's really important for me to swim in the water because it's like pacing nature as she changes. So that when, in the summer, when you go and swim, it doesn't mean anything. But if you manage to go down with her through the seasons as she gets colder, only calling her she, and then it's a kind of respect for what nature is. You're marking time with her. And I thought that's a wonderful thing to do, wonderful thing to say. So that was a belief that I was also able to take on and to use. But one of the things they all talked about as well were the benefits. And in fact, I'm going to ask Maria Antonietta if you could put the link in the chat box. I've recently written a short article, which Rini has already seen, about winter swimming in the pond. And I thought you might enjoy it. There are lots of benefits. People find different things, but they're generally now known to be huge benefits to swimming in cold water. Health benefits, but not when you have bronchitis already. I normally go on a Tuesday, and I didn't this morning because I thought that might completely finish me off. So I didn't go. But there are lots of health and mental health benefits too, interestingly. A lot of people who I spoke to talked about getting rid of stress and getting them on an even keel, helping with long COVID or all kinds of things. So there's lots that's very positive about it. There are also some downsides, and one of them is the danger of hyper. I'm going to share this with you because I think this is actually something you'll enjoy linguistically. When I first started doing it again this year, I looked up hypothermia because everybody was telling me, be careful of hypothermia. So, right, what's hypothermia? I'll check it out. Hypothermia is when your body core temperature drops to below 35 degrees, okay? So you don't want to stay in so long that that happens. So what people have done is they've come up with, which I think is a very funny and very clever way of remembering to look for signs that you might be becoming hypothermic. And they're called the umbles, the U-M-B-L-E-S, the umbles. And they all begin with the different letters. I don't know if you can think of a word ending in umble that might be a symptom of hypothermia. Now, you see, teacher's going to tell you if you don't come up with them. I can't hear you, Rini. What is it? Or write it in the chat box. Hang on.
I just said rumbles and grumbles, but neither of them make sense.
No, grumbles. Grumbles is certainly one because grumble, you get ratty, you get cross, you get out of sorts. So grumble is one. Bumble is one. You start to kind of talk gibberish, you talk nonsense. Fumble, your fingers don't work. Your extremities get very cold very quickly, and you can't move them. You can't move your hands and fingers. Mumble, you don't speak very clearly. Stumble, you lose your balance. And finally, tumble, you fall down. Goodness. So
how long do you stay in, Jane, on average?
I don't stay in very long because I'm having read all that, I thought I don't want to go through that process. You can see the ring there in the pond. There are several rings around. I swim round the rings and back. Probably no longer than 5 minutes. Plenty. Absolutely. Yeah. And the important thing to do, if you ever want to do this, is to get warm and dry as quickly as you can afterwards. It's not so much about staying in. You can stay in and not feel cold, but you can feel cold 10 minutes later.
Yes.
Rini also does lots of swimming.
But it's 11 degrees or 10 degrees.
11 is
6 degrees
not warm.
is much
11 is not warm.
But it's much better than 6.
Once you get below 15, it's classified as cold, and it is.
Right. Oh, good.
Yeah. Apparently.
Oh, Jane, does winter swimming have more or less the same effect of walking on burning coal?
I think there is a bit. It gives you a sense of, and if you see the link that you're putting in the chat box, there's something on this. It gives you a real boost to your system, and it gives you a sense, which is not true, but it does give you this sense of I can do this, I can do anything, which is what walking on hot coals does. Yeah, it does give, which is always a bit dangerous. But it gives you a real boost of confidence and ability. Yeah. And I think it's probably, I don't know, people see, I have walked on hot coals too. For me, I prefer the cold water. I felt quite nervous doing the hot coals. Yeah, that's a good question.